Welcome, Gunrunner.
Hello everybody, Kieran aka The Laird here, and I'm back with another hardware review for you. And as you can already see, this one is Amstrad related, and those of you who already follow my channel will know that I have previously looked at this right here, the Amstrad CPC 464, on my channel some time ago, with this actual very monitor that's here, Amstrad green screen monitor. Those of you who haven't seen that video, is related to this one and want to watch that first, I'll stick a link up in the top right hand corner so you can click on to go and watch that if you so wish. But I will be looking at it briefly with regards to this video anyway. What I'm actually going to be looking at today is the computer that you can see on the other side, which is the CPC 6128. So let's grab that. And there we go. So obviously this is a disc-based Amstrad, as opposed to tape-based, which the 464 was. The 464 was widely the most popular model of the machine. The Amstrad sold about 3 million units worldwide, of which about 2 million were the tape-based 464. So close to 1 million units sold of the 6128. So which most people regard as obviously the best one, because there is a third one which I'll talk about in a moment. But just to mention, I actually picked this up off Marketplace, another one of my many Marketplace scavengers. Only cost me 20 quid, absolutely nothing, but it was in really bad condition. You can still see a few of the scuffs and scratches and stuff like that, and it's still not as clean as I'd like it. I really need to take it apart and wash all the keys and stuff, because you could barely even read any of this on here. It had been treated so badly, it was so filthy. I've been at it with cotton buds and everything. It was awful. So I could never believe that people sell stuff like that on Marketplace. I would never sell something on there without, at least trying to give it a bit of a clean up first. As soon as I saw it in the listing, I thought, oh my god, and I knocked him down on the price a little bit as well. So all good. But it was just the Amstrad, nothing else. As I say, the monitor I actually got with the previous pickup of my 464. So let's go back and talk about the history again a little bit on the 6128. So the 464 was introduced in 1984. Then another model followed in 85, which was the CPC 664. I'll stick an image of that up there in the top right so you can see it, what that looked like. Which was the first disc-based Amstrad. It looked quite radically different because they made some big changes actually to the way the keyboard looks and stuff. So you can see, I'll move this over here actually a moment. This one, so you can see the difference between the 464 and the 664, and you'll see that there is actually a lot more difference to the design than you'd probably expect. Obviously, other than the tape deck being removed for a disk drive, obviously the cursor keys and stuff like that, very different. Whoops. Actually, I'm going to put that there, if it will balance there for a minute, so we can see the difference between these two. Because the 6128 arrived in late 1985. So, as you can probably already gather, the 664 was actually only on the market for about 6 months, actually less than 6 months, before they introduced the 6128. It was a stopgap really, because what they did was they just kept the same memory configuration and stuff like that, but added disk drive, a disk operating system, and actually CPM plus operating system. And actually they advertised it as the cheapest machine with a disk drive and the cheapest computer to have CPM compatibility as well at the time, so that was quite a big thing. But the internal hardware was mostly the same. The 6128, as you can probably gather, they doubled the memory to 128K rather than 64K. And they had a new version of the disk operating system, and it still had the CPM Plus compatibility. But there was no other differences. It's not like, with the Spectrums, where, you had a new sound chip and stuff like that on the 128 machines. These were literally the same. You could plug a tape deck into the 6128 to play tape games. So you had full compatibility with 464 software as well. And one thing that might seem surprising, which you might have already noticed, is that the 6128 is actually quite a bit shorter. It's not as big. You can see there it's probably about 1.5 inches shorter than the 464, which is quite cool. And you'll see that one of the main differences is actually the keyboard's different. So the cursor keys are now down the bottom instead of being up the top. There's no gap there. You've got F keys here rather than numerical keys, so that's quite different, and not as garish. Gone are obviously the multicolored keys, and we've got this more grey, more sedate design. I mean, really, the only colour is on here, which tells you a bit of information. You've got your master colour chart, which tells you which each of the 26 colours in the palette are. Not quite sure why you really need that on top of the disk drive, to be honest, because it's something you really look at a manual for, and key numbers there as well. I don't think that's particularly useful information. It's a bit strange that they put it there, but there we go. That's that. So let's go back to that hardware for a moment. As I say, it's the same in in both machines. You have your 3-channel AY sound chip. I mentioned obviously the 26 colours, but there are different graphics resolutions from a monochrome text mode up to the full colour mode, which is obviously a lot lower resolution. I'll stick a little thing up actually showing you the technical specifications on the screen for those interested, which is easier than me reading them all out. But one of the reasons why, as I mentioned, obviously looking a lot more sedate with the grey keys and stuff like that, and not as bright and garish, and obviously the CPM Plus, which I mentioned, compatibility. And one of the reasons why that was because Amstrad were actually trying to aim this machine a bit more at business users, which might seem strange to those who know Amstrad, because Amstrad were obviously very well known for business computers already, with like the PCW, which is also a Z80 based 8-bit computer, the same as the CPC is. But the PCW obviously didn't have, it was green screen only. It had that monitor that had the built-in disk drives. So you didn't have any colour, so it wasn't really ideal for games. You didn't have like a sound chip, things like that. It was really, the PCW was designed for word processing and spreadsheets. That was its use. So with the 6128, it was promoted as a kind of step up from the PCW. So if you wanted to do fancy graphs, and I remember there was an advert they did that had kind of lots of graphs and pie charts and stuff like that on it, to show that that was something you could do on this machine that you couldn't really do on the PCW, because you could use lots of different colours to do that kind of thing. So he did push that, and there was lots of business software commissioned by Amstrad for the 6128 as well. I mean, I've got some of them on tape, stuff, like the Time Man 1, which came with the 64 as well. And then there's obviously Easy and Word, and there's all these ones they created. So they're obviously also on disk as well, plus some obviously CPM compatible stuff. Let's move that out of the way for a minute, because we will look around the machine to see what else it's got to offer. So I want to go back to this disk drive for a moment, because one thing that's very important to mention is that the Amstrad has a completely non-standard disk drive. It's a 3-inch. Supposedly the reason was that Amstrad could buy these 3-inch disk drives from Hitachi a hell of a lot cheaper than 3.5-inch disk drives, which went well with their Alan Sugar's philosophy of trying to sell computers as cheap as possible for the masses. That was his all-in-one solution. You always got the computer with the monitor, and you've got that all-in-one package with a load of software as well, games and business and stuff like that. I've got a disc here, so I'm just going to grab it out just so I can show you. So here's an example of an Amstrad disc, as you can see. And you can actually see, funnily enough, that label's actually been stuck over the blank disc label. So most of the discs you'll find were obviously made by Hitachi, but there's a few other companies who made them. Maxell is one that always springs to mind. I've got a big box of Maxell discs somewhere, because of course these discs were the same as the PCW, and they were also the same as the Spectrum Plus 3. They use the same discs on those, and I've looked at the Plus 3 on my channel previously, and there wasn't really many other computers that used these discs. I think the Einstein was another, which actually was fairly similar in many ways to the Amstrad hardware-wise. And there was the Sega SC3000 in Japan, which also used these discs, strangely enough. And the SC3000 was basically an MSX. It wasn't MSX compatible, but it was pretty close, the hardware, to being an MSX. So again, not that far removed from the Amstrad being Z80 based, a similar sound chip, etc. So you'll notice straight away with these, one thing is you had to turn them over, and they have a write protect switch for each side of the disc, which is obviously very unlike 3.5-inch discs where they could read both sides. And you also notice that the top part isn't covered like it is on 3.5-inch discs. There's no slider, so you just have to stick that in. And then if you wanted to if you had to change the disc over to read the other side, you had to flip it out, turn it over, and put it in the other way. So that's the unusual disc drive. But it is worth mentioning, actually, that you could connect up standard 3.5-inch and 5.25-inch disc drives to the Amstrad CPC2 if you wanted to do so. As well as a tape player, as I mentioned, and obviously there was lots of other things you could connect up as well. But we will have a look around the hardware in a moment. But that pretty much covers all the differences between the computers that I wanted to mention. So let's have a look around the Amstrad and we'll see what else it's got. The 6128. So we've had a look at the disk drive there on the bottom. Not a lot there. Just tells you about the power supply use and that. Then we'll have a look at the back. I'll turn it over. So one thing I want to mention first is this cable here. I mentioned it in the 464 video as well. This cable here plugs into the monitor. There is no external power supply for the Amstrad CPCs. They get their power from the monitor. So it was a bit more complicated if you wanted to connect it to TV. Obviously, you always got a monitor with it, whether it be a colour monitor or a green screen monitor. There was obviously a big price difference. The green screen on the 6128, I believe it retailed for £300 originally with the green screen, or £400 with the colour screen. I knew I had a friend of mine who had the green screen. I always felt sorry for him because obviously he wanted it for games. His parents thought the green screen was fine because they thought he was going to use it for education and business and things like that. But he always wanted a colour monitor. You could get a TV modulator that plugged into this monitor socket on the back, and then you could plug it into TV. But then obviously you needed an external power supply, and you needed the lead, to plug it into your TV. And apparently the picture quality wasn't very good. I've never actually seen an Amstrad plugged into a TV, so I can't comment. But there we go. But you had to connect it to your monitor. So there's your power switch there. And there's a volume. Now that's important because right here, that's your speaker. The speakers, there's no speaker in the monitor. The sound didn't go through the monitor. It came out the back of here. Less than ideal really, because obviously the sound quality wasn't that amazing. It would have sounded better coming through a TV or monitor. But there we go, that was something you had to put up with. And then you've got your expansion ports. So you see there's a big expansion port there with a printer port right next to it, and they're all bare and exposed. They were really dirty when I picked this up. They were full of gunk. It was really awful. Before anyone asks, it does actually work. I did power it up. I haven't really got a power socket that I can reach from here. It wouldn't show up very well because the disk drive doesn't actually work. I found that out quite quickly, so it needs the belt changing on it. So there wouldn't be really anything I could show you other than it just powering up into basic, which isn't particularly exciting because belt change. If it's anything like the Plus 3, the Spectrum Plus 3, it's really easy to do because I did it on the Plus 3 very, very easily actually. You had to use a pair of tweezers. It's a little bit fiddly, but it only took me a matter of minutes to do it, and then it worked perfectly. So hopefully it's the same with this. I haven't investigated that, but I will do because I would like to get it working and get some games up and running on it, especially as my next print book that I have coming out to AG Books is actually a compendium of Amstrad CPC games. So then it will be really good because I'll have a working 464 and a working 6128, so I'll have the extra memory. And actually going back to the extra memory for a moment, to talk about that is that there was some advantages, although the hardware is virtually identical. Obviously the extra memory did offer some advantages. There is some 128K only software, but not a great deal of it. But there's some games, one that springs to mind actually for some reason is Outrun, where on the 64K model there is no music, but on the 128K model there is, which is obviously somewhat similar to Spectrum, where a lot of games only have music on 128. You might find stuff like speech as well in some games that wasn't on there. It would load more of the game in, so there might be some games on tape where they're multi-load. On here they're not, but obviously you've got disc loading anyway, which is a hell of a lot quicker. So there is some stuff that only works on the 128, but not a great deal. But there is a lot of stuff that's got enhancements when played on the 128K hardware, which is pretty cool. I have got some games here in the background, but I say I've only got tape stuff. I haven't really got any disc stuff ready to play on it at the moment. I will probably try and pick up some discs, but these are just some odd tapes that I had lying around, so Amstrad tapes. But you can't really see them in the background there, they're a bit hidden, so I needn't have bothered really with those. So, in summary, my usual summary at the end in terms of whether the Amstrad is worth buying and what I think of it and stuff. There's no doubt this is the best Amstrad in many ways to get. Obviously, the CPC range was replaced in 1990 with the CPC Plus range, which was the 6128 Plus, the 464 Plus, and of course the ill-fated and infamous GX 4000 console. The Plus machines had some minor enhancements, like the fact they had a larger colour palette, they had stereo sound, but they were still based on an 8-bit CPU. So they were fully backwards compatible, but they were still based on 8-bit CPU, which is obviously a bit of a bottleneck when you're trying to put out better quality graphics and sound. They could use cartridges because they were compatible with the GX 4000 console as well. But the CPC Plus machines, despite looking really cool with the nice white design that they had, they were an absolute dismal failure and weren't what Amstrad hoped they would be. They were trying to compete with the Amiga and the Atari ST and games consoles, and they sold really badly. So badly, in fact, that Amstrad discontinued them within about 6 months. So introduced in 1990, gone the same year. And after that, Amstrad's computer range comprised solely, really, of PCs. And actually, that's the route they went down. They started building probably the first, certainly in the UK, gaming PCs that you could buy. So you could buy a setup that had speakers, graphics card, all of those things, even game software with it. So they started actually selling games-based PCs. I can't really think of anyone who was doing that at that time. So that was the category they moved into, and they were very successful. They already had a big, footprint in the business market anyway, and they were very successful selling PCs for some time to come before being taken over, obviously, eventually by Sky, because they produced the set-top boxes for Sky satellite dishes, which led to Sky actually buying the whole company off Alan Sugar. So Amstrad doesn't really exist today at all, because they were amalgamated into Sky. But I think Sky now, they got taken over, didn't they? Comcast, so owned by them now. So yeah, unless you want to fork out big money for one of the CPC Plus machines, which are obviously quite rare and hard to find, this is the one to go for if you want to get an Amstrad, because you've got your disk loading. But obviously, if you wanted to, you could take the disk drive out if it's faulty, put a GoTech drive or something like that, and there's plenty of other solutions now for loading games. You don't have to use tapes or discs. But obviously, you want the 6128 really to get the extra memory, which is important, especially there's a lot of homebrew stuff actually that's come out. Like there's this amazing port of Pinball Dreams, and if I remember rightly, that requires 128K of memory. So probably more so with the homebrew stuff actually than the commercial stuff in terms of games that require the 128K. But certainly in the UK, the Amstrad was really only successful in Europe. The UK especially, Spain it did very well. Germany it did fairly well, where it was sold as the Schneider CPC. But mainly the UK, where it was there's this trinity of the 8-bit home computers, the most successful ones, which are the Amstrad, the Spectrum, and the Commodore 64, all competing with each other. Obviously, the Spectrum and Commodore 64 sold a lot more than the Amstrad, but the Amstrad was always getting plenty of software like they were, because it was easy to port games from the Spectrum to the Amstrad, because the Amstrad had a graphics mode that was similar to the Spectrum, only with less colour. So there were a lot of lazy ports where people just took Spectrum games and put them on the CPC with very little enhancements to take advantage of all those extra colours, which is a shame, because when the palette on the CPC was used properly, it had easily the best looking games of the three, far nicer looking than the Commodore 64. So yes, there's a glut of software out there. So if you're into retro gaming, you don't know a lot about the Amstrad, then there's never going to be any shortage of games out there. There's literally thousands of titles that you can go out and grab for the Amstrad, and it was supported by all the major software houses of the time, like Ocean and US Gold and Activision, Gremlin, people like that. So yeah, there's tons and tons of great games for this computer, lots there to go and discover. If you're into your 8-bit computers, then really the Amstrad is a machine that you should have in your collection. I hope you've enjoyed my look at the CPC 6128, and I'll see you all again for another video very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.